This is Virtual's Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. Welcome to another episode of Chess Noob Game Review, where the focus will be on seeing how a game could have been improved. Now, in this game, I play for Team Australia against Team Canada. And so my opponent is a Canadian, and I had the white pieces. So as usual, I play the Vienna Game, and this game is a very good study looking at how to sort of use some tactics for a Kingside attack in the Vienna Game in the middle game. Now, I started with e4, e5, and of course, knight c3. My opponent, my Canadian friend, defended the opening very well with the Max Lange Defense. Against the Max Lange Defense, I usually will play the bishop to c4, and they played the other knight. So against that, I usually play d3, and now they bring out their bishop. And if you look at sort of Stockfish's evaluation, the recommendation for the next best move is knight f3. And I know this, but I hate playing this move because this basically transposes the game back into the Italian, specifically the guaco pianissimo, so the very quiet game in the Italian. And I really don't like playing the guaco piano line, so obviously I'm not going to play that move. Historically, I've played f4, so the sort of Vienna Gambit-like game. This is potentially quite okay. I think it's still around 0-0-0. But the problem is with the bishop now, the black bishop, the dark-squared black bishop on c5, it makes castling kingside not immediately available. So it's a bit of a challenge because normally you would want to castle and then have the rook down the f-file, but that's not so easy when the bishop's already in this position. So recently what I've been doing and what I played in this game is to play bishop to e3. Now the tactical logic here is I'm immediately asking black the question in the opening, what are they going to do with their dark squared bishop? So if they decide to take, well then I get to take back with my f-pawn. I've clarified that dark squared bishop, dark square diagonal. Potentially I can develop and then short castles, and I already have the open f-file. So potentially that works quite well. On the other hand, if black doesn't want to trade bishops, then they're going to have to move their bishop a second time, because I would otherwise be reasonably happy to just whack that bishop, even if they choose to play something like d6. So here my opponent decided that they did want to preserve the bishop, so they moved their bishop a second time. So that's good for me. Forced a concession. They had to move to bishop 2 times, and they moved the bishop back to b6. And psychologically, once black has made this move, this bishop is potentially a little bit immortal. They're probably not going to take, even if that is their best move. So that's excellent. So now I'm jump the knight forward. Again, a provocative move. And the tactical logic here is that I actually want them to take that knight. So I want to move this knight out of the defense of their kingside. If they take, if we trade knights, I can capture back with bishop, and the bishop still stares at the f7 pawn. So that was my plan, and that's what they did. So the captures, they now short castle, I now develop my knight, and let's take stock at this point. We're sort of at move 8, black has, I suppose, has castled, but let's have a look. This bishop staring at their king, this bishop is looking at the king side, this knight potentially can sort of jump forward, sort of attacking into the king's position, my queen is potentially, ready to strike into the king side territory, while pretty much the majority of black's pieces are kind of still a bit stuck on the queen side. Now, with the possible exception of that rook. However, that rook is stuck behind the f-pawn. And the f-pawn with my bishop on the light square diagonal pins that pawn to the king. So the mobility of, in fact, both this pawn and the rook is kind of hampered. Now, this pin, keep an eye out on it in this game. It actually becomes quite important. And one of the consequences is this pawn cannot move forward, but also this pawn does not exert any defense of the G6 square. And this can sometimes be a little bit difficult to remember for the player with the black pieces. So moving forward, that makes sense, playing d6, opening up that diagonal. Now I jump my bishop forward, attacking the queen, potentially winning some tempo. They move the queen out of the way, so that battery potentially could be good for black, but at the moment it's not really facing anything. I now bring my knight forward. So the idea here is, potentially, remember that is pinned. If I could get my knight into that position, that is potentially quite powerful. Here, they now play h6. Now, h6 is okay, and I don't actually make the best move now. So the tactical attack on the king will generally have some certain themes, including potentially sacrificing a piece to punch a hole into one of these two pawns. So if you whack one of these two pawns with this f pawn still pinned to the kingside defense is very, very substantially damaged. Now, in the actual game, I decided to bring an extra piece into the party. I brought queen to h5. However, as you can see, Stockfish identified a better move, which I didn't see. And that move is immediately bishop capturing the pawn on h6, puncturing the defense of the black king. Brilliant move. Why is that a brilliant move? Well, black really can't capture back. And if they did capture back, we now have an absolutely brilliant line. You can see +5. Serious mistake by black. Because what we now have is knight to f5, blocking this diagonal. And if you remember, this is still pinned to the king. Here, let's say black decided that they wanted to do something about that knight, rotating their knight back. That is a mistake. Mate in 3. What would that look like? Queen check. If the knight tries to block, queen captures. Remember, that is pinned. It does not defend the G6 square. King has no choice but to move to h8, and then that will be mate. So in fact, in this position, black has only one move that prevents that line. They have to get rid of that knight, which means they have to sacrifice their queen. Absolutely winning line. Now, I didn't see that in the game. As I said, I played queen to h5, and that is still a very tricky line because, again, if black opts to capture, I still have the same move. Now we have knight to g6. Remember, g6 is not defended by that pawn with it being pinned to the king. And now checkmate is unavoidable. Mate in 4. Basically, black can do some spite checks to delay the agony. Check, block, check, take. Try to, block, but, take, and then that's done. Mate. So that is mate as well. So that's what I saw. So I saw that here, if I brought my queen to h5, they actually cannot take. In fact, I welcome them taking. Now, to all credit to my Canadian friend, they saw that. So they didn't take, and they decided to rotate their knight around. And this was actually a pretty brilliant move, actually. Here, I wasn't sure what I needed to do, but what I did see was that they were sort of winning tempo and material with this. So I decided to short castles. You can see that Stockfish actually sees that this is a mistake. In fact, it's even worse than that. It's about -6 on high depth. And basically, this was the problem with actually this move. I actually don't quite have enough time if Black plays very accurately. Luckily for me, Black didn't see the tactic there. It's very difficult to see. And in fact, what they were trying to do was to rotate their knight to the defense of the king, which seems to make sense, but it actually doesn't work. So they played knight to e6, which was a blunder. And now, again, this misevaluates just how strong my position is. It's actually around +4 at high depth. The reason why that doesn't work is I still have that move. The bishop captures, and in fact, it's a brilliant move. Similarly, because if they capture, then, you know, basically Black is lost in this position. So takes. They decide to, again, not open up their g-file, but this doesn't work because, you know, yes, they're attacking my queen, but I take. I think they were thinking they could take my bishop back, but unfortunately, that is a mistake, because now I have knight to g6. Once again, remember, I think my opponent of the black piece has simply forgot that that was pinned, and this mate is just unavoidable. Again, you know, they could potentially do some spite checks, but, you know, my opponent now had a little bit more dignity than that, opted to resign at this point. Good game, GG. My big takeaway from this game is that as a Vienna player, you need to study the Kingside attack patterns. They are otherwise a little bit difficult to see in game. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.